Today on CityCast Philly, we're back with another midweek roundup. We're talking about the latest from the encampment at Penn's campus and updates from the lawsuit to stop renovations at FDR Park. Plus, this week's Philly News Quiz. It's Tuesday, May 7th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me this week is Jarrett Midovich, editor-in-chief at the Daily Pennsylvanian and a junior at the University of Pennsylvania. Hey, Jarrett.
Hey, Trinae. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Laura Benshoff, executive producer of CityCast Philly. Hey, Laura.
Good morning, Trinae.
Good morning. And Asha Prahar, the editor of the Hey Philly newsletter. Hey, Asha.
Hi, Trinae.
All right, let's get started with some of the news stories that have been going on. Jarrett, we've been following the news of the pro-Palestinian protests around our region and around the country on college campuses. The tents that are set up at the University of Pennsylvania have been there now for more than a week. How big is the protest at this point?
So right now, I'd say it's around maybe 35 to 40 tents, with a fluctuating number of protesters kind of throughout the different days of the week. You know, when there's rallies scheduled or counter protests, there's kind of a heightened presence both among organizers, but also police and other community members. During the nighttime and those less quiet periods of the day, there's generally maybe between like 20 to 30 people consistently. And as has been reported, that consists of Philadelphia community members, Penn students, faculty visits. You know, administrators are maintaining a near constant presence around the encampment. But right now, I'd say it's around 35 tents, which is up from maybe like the first days of the encampment, but stagnant since then.
Now, can you remind us, what do protesters want from the university?
Yeah, so they want three things, which they boil down to the slogan disclose, divest, defend. So disclose. They want the university to disclose all of its investments through its associated investments fund. Basically, what companies is Penn putting its money into? Divest. The protesters want the university to divest from all companies that are profiting from Israel's war in Gaza and occupation of Palestinian land. And defend. They want the university to defend its Palestinian students while also reinstating Penn students against the occupation of Palestine, which is a pro-Palestinian student group that the university suspended in the days prior to the ongoing encampment. So those are their main demands. The university has indicated that it's not willing to divest from Israel. In fact, it's describing that as illegal according to a Pennsylvania law. And otherwise, it has been attempting to negotiate according to its own reports. But the university has been unable to reach a compromise with the encampment for them to disband.
So, Jarrett, last week, administrators started taking disciplinary action and saying that they would check IDs of the protesters. What's the latest move by the administration to disband the group?
So throughout, I would say the first 5 days, there was kind of like an escalating situation of warnings, everything from, trespassing notices pasted on the barrier surrounding the encampment to an email calling the encampment to disband immediately. Now what you're seeing is more consequences for the organizers and the protesters themselves. So you mentioned the disciplinary action. Disciplinary notices were served to multiple student protesters early last week. And then most recently, Monday morning, there was a statement from interim president Larry Jameson to the university community, his first in over a week, where he shared that student organizers and participants in the encampment may face disciplinary action that would prevent them from graduating or continuing their studies at Penn. So that's a development that's to be expected with the arrival of a disciplinary proceeding, but it's the first that's been mentioned explicitly, that the university is being clear that it's considering further action against these protesters if they don't disband their encampment within the next few days.
Have you heard anything on the ground of how the protesters have reacted to that?
Yeah, so we're continuing to get, statements and responses coming in. So on Monday morning, there was a statement from the organizers on Instagram where they basically criticized the interim president and the university for describing their protests as non-peaceful, pursuing disciplinary action, and also, in their view, distracting from the causes that they're championing, right? So they're citing the imminent invasion of Rafah and Gaza, and they're really saying, look, the university is trying to distract from what's happening in Gaza. And you've also seen a similar statement from Penn faculty for Justice in Palestine, which is kind of a support from the professors at the university for the causes of the encampment as well. So it's continuing to seem like there's not really a route for compromise here, but we'll obviously have to see how that develops going into finals and commencement season.
Speaking of that possible compromise or a way to kind of have groups talk with one another, there was a story in the Daily Pennsylvanian over the weekend saying that conversations were continuing between protesters and administrators. What's the status of those discussions to get to that compromise?
Yeah, so it all but appears that there's kind of a stalemate right now, which is kind of the reason why you saw the statement Monday morning from the interim president. It just sounds like the two meetings that we know that have been held between organizers and administrators have not been fruitful. So the most recent description of those negotiations included a demand from the university for the encampment to take down half their tents. And then from there, the university will be willing to negotiate. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the organizers are not willing to do that. They want to guarantee that there will not be arrests, and they disapprove of what they describe as a culture of intimidation prior to negotiations. They'd like to see the promises made by the university to adhere to their demands before any sort of response is taken. So that's the latest on the negotiations. But I think when you see the statement like the one you did from the interim president Monday morning, it's pretty clear that the university is trying to be clear that it hasn't been able to negotiate productively, and it's calling on the community to kind of bear with it while it figures out what it needs to do.
I'm not sure if you've looked into this, but I'm wondering, have we seen a demonstration like this between protesters and the administrators to this level before on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So actually, I think the answer to this kind of helps demonstrate why Penn is in a unique situation compared to other colleges around the country, which I think there's a number of reasons to support that. But one of them is that Penn pretty recently had an encampment in the same place on College Green 2 years ago. And that was for a different cause. It was for Fossil Free Penn, which is an organization calling for the university to divest from fossil fuels. That encampment lasted for 39 days. We're at 12 days right now. So imagine the current encampment lasting for over 3 times as long. And it culminated with the interruption of our homecoming game, where protesters stormed onto the field at the halftime and were ultimately arrested, which prompted the conclusion of that encampment. So I think it's really interesting because we have a pretty recent parallel dating back, now one university administration, to how the university handled the encampment. Then I would say there's a lot of important distinctions to make. One of which is just the level of intensity of the protests right now is just like, I haven't seen that during my time at Penn, and I don't think many people have, including the current administration. That encampment was of a smaller size. The causes were receiving less national attention, and it wasn't part of a wave of encampments across the country like you're seeing right now. Let alone with this encampment, the vast majority of it has been peaceful. That said, there have been individuals detained for, spraying an odorous substance on tents. There's been someone who was holding like a knife holster around the encampment. Like there's just been kind of this culture where the encampment and just like the culture and the emotions it provokes has kind of provided for like an increasingly unstable environment that's prompted the university to seek police presence.
I also want to note that, Jared, it's the end of the school year. Graduation is coming up. There are a lot of events that are going to be happening on campus. What are you hearing from, the student body? How do they feel about these protests?
There's somewhat of a majority culture of perhaps indifference among the student body, obviously absent the type of escalation that you've seen at schools like Columbia and UCLA. There have been tangible effects that I know the student body is resonating with and reacting to. Some examples of that: Hay Day last week, I participated in that. That's the tradition for juniors entering their senior year. That tradition was rerouted away from the encampment to kind of avoid any interaction. So, that was one tangible effect. The university is rerouting some of its events. There were other traditions moved as well. final exams have been relocated out of College Hall, which is the building directly behind the encampment. And now what you're seeing is just an increasing awareness that this encampment is continuing and it's approaching commencement season. You saw Monday morning that Columbia canceled its main ceremony. So now I think there's going to be increasing speculation as to, are these protesters going to cause some sort of interruption, and what is the university's approach going to be to maintain those end of year events?
Any idea what could happen next in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tough to say. I think the easiest, most likely answer is that it's going to continue. I don't have reporting to back this up, so just take it with a grain of salt. But just from my experience on the ground, it seems like the university, given its current philosophy on things and seeking to de-escalate, it would be very unlikely to, bring in police while students are in the buildings next door taking their exams. So I find it hard to see a scenario where arrests happen this week or more forceful police response. But I certainly think the deadline of commencement is at the top of administrators' minds. That's something that we're going to watch as a potential natural end for the encampment, or the potential for escalation or the protests to grow to a greater intensity.
To read more about this ongoing story, check out the links from the Daily Pennsylvanian in our show notes. More news of the week after the break. All right, Laura, on the show, we've been following the debate over the future of FDR Park down in South Philly. In 2022, the city started a massive renovation of the park, which is supposed to add more ball fields for the city and also make the area more resilient to climate change. That's according to some plans from the Fairmount Park Conservancy. Fast forward, though, in March 2024, some Philly residents actually filed a lawsuit to stop the construction. Laura, was this group successful with their lawsuit?
They were not, at least not so far. So last week, Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas Judge Sheila Wood Skipper presided over a hearing, and she basically said, you know what, I don't think I have jurisdiction over this matter. The lawsuit was filed in Orphans Court. She said that was the wrong venue for this lawsuit to be heard, according to WHYY News. Now, as a reminder, what this lawsuit was about, there were about a dozen people, just under a dozen people, who filed a lawsuit in March, and they've been trying to halt this massive $250 million renovation of FDR Park. And their argument was that the renovations radically change the nature of the space. The changes are too extreme because they involve reshaping the landscape. If you go down to FDR Park now, you can see there's earth-moving equipment. They're cutting down a lot of trees. And the plan also involves adding a lot of artificial turf fields, which is one other thing the plaintiff said was potentially an environmental hazard. That's according to the Philadelphia Inquirer. So when they brought this suit back in March, it kind of put a pause on everything that was happening down there. So like you mentioned, construction's been going on since 2022. This plan is in motion. But with this lawsuit, everything stopped. There was a plan to cut down some heritage trees. These are older, healthy trees to sort of make the plan come to fruition. That was paused. And then, you had this development late last week in court on Thursday where Judge Wood Skipper really asked both sides to talk about the nature of the changes happening in the park. So the residents who were suing and their lawyer, Samuel Stretton, they argued, again, that this would be a radical change. It would impact the wildlife that lives in the park. It would impact the ecosystem in ways that would be irreversible. But then on the other side, you had attorneys for Parks and Rec, so attorneys for the city, arguing that, this isn't that big of a change. This is a public park. It's going to remain a public park. And that, they're saying we are preserving this use because climate change is coming. This is an area that floods. If we don't do renovations on the park, it might be unusable for city residents in the coming years. So we really need to do this. That was the city's argument, according to a write-up in the Inquirer. And in the end, the judge essentially handed a win to the city, saying, yeah, I can't hear this case. I can't move forward. And all pauses on work were pulled. So basically, it's back where we started.
Okay, so this seems like it was a victory for the city in this case. What happens now?
So the city got right back to work. There was reporting over the weekend, Friday and Saturday, that those trees that I mentioned that were supposed to be cut down, they started coming down. You could see posts coming on the Save the Meadows social media accounts. Save the Meadows is a group that's been advocating against the renovations. The Inquirer also covered the clear cutting that was happening. So yeah, that pause ended when the judge sort of said, she couldn't hear this case anymore, and work has resumed. But you also had statements coming from Stretton, the attorney for residents who had sued, saying, we have an appeal in motion. We're going to appeal this to the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. So they're still hoping that they can find some purchase for this lawsuit, that they can, still find a venue that will hear their argument that, hey, this is too much of a change and we don't think that this should go through. So we'll see what happens.
All right. To read more about this story, check out the links in our show notes. And finally, let's look back at the week of news and take a news quiz. Jared, you're going to have fun with this.
Oh, boy.
Get ready.
Yeah, so this is something we've been doing every week, where basically I ask 3 questions about stuff that's been going on in Philly, things that have been reported in the local media, and I test you guys. So yeah, question number 1. Which famous statue in Philly is undergoing routine maintenance on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week?
I know this one. Rocky.
Wait, what are they doing to Rocky?
They're going to clean him up, right?
Yeah, so they're cleaning and waxing the statue. So there are going to be some temporary barriers around the statue today and tomorrow between 8 and 4. According to Billy Penn, tourists will still be able to see the statue while it's being cleaned, but getting a picture might be harder than usual since you can't really get up close.
That's going to be a bummer for some people,
Yeah.
especially if they've traveled far to see the Rocky statue. But there is a Rocky museum right next to it, so maybe they can get some stuff from there.
little consolation. All right, so question number 2. Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be in Montgomery County on Wednesday to talk about reproductive rights. Which Abbott Elementary star is going to join her?
Wait, I think I know this.
Jared's got to guess.
Jared knows.
All right.
Wait, is it? I'm really scared. Okay, Cheryl Lee Randolph, is that her name?
Ralph.
Ralph.
Cheryl
Okay.
Lee Ralph.
Yeah.
You got 2/3 of it.
Yeah, it's Cheryl Lee Ralph, according to the Inquirer. So that's the actress who plays Mrs. Barbara Howard on Abbott Elementary.
She's so good.
Yes, she's actually married to a Philly state senator, Vincent Hughes. So she's a bit of a local figure in addition to being on the comedy show about a Philly school.
She's a celebrity.
Yeah. She's local royalty.
Yes. And she's actually got a history of being vocal on reproductive rights. And she actually, I didn't know this until I read it in the Inquirer today, but she's actually partnered with Vice President Harris before. She joined her on a visit to Ghana last year. So.
Okay. I did not know that either.
Okay. So for the last question, we're gonna go statewide on this one.
Oh boy.
So Spotlight PA recently reported that Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro has been using the state plane more frequently than his predecessor, Tom Wolf. And then there are other state officials who also use this plane, like the lieutenant governor, the attorney general. So what I want you to guess, though, is how many trips the plane made during Shapiro's first year in office.
I saw this story.
And this is just trips with Shapiro. This isn't trips
No,
with...
this is trips with everyone. So
with
any of these
everyone.
officials. How many trips did it make in the year? So 365 days in the year. How many trips are we thinking?
Does the Pennsylvania plane have a name? Is it like Air Force One, but it's like Keystone One or something like that?
Keystone One, I like that.
I'm trying to think what you would call Pennsylvania's plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Asha, this is hard.
Throw some numbers out there.
Yeah, Jared, she'll try to stump us.
I
Yeah.
wanted one stumper in here.
You did, yeah. I did not read the story, so I'm
I
feeling
didn't read
really
this
in the dark.
either.
Yeah.
I know how much it costs taxpayers, $410,000 or something dollars.
Wait, no, you're actually totally on point with that. That was the 2023 bill to taxpayers for the full 2023. Yeah.
All right, ding, ding, ding. Jared, you get extra points for that.
Yeah, you get extra credit.
Oh, wow.
All right. Can you help us with a range?
Yeah, is it more than 100, less than 100?
It's more than 100.
Okay.
Wow, this
Okay.
plane was active.
It's busy.
Yeah. I'm gonna go for 172.
Any other guesses?
I'll just guess 126. I don't know. It just feels good. I don't know. I did not see this story. This missed me. I want to read it now.
I'll do the middle answer. So 151.
Okay, so Laura was closest. The answer is 113. So according to Spotlight PA, so these weren't all the governor's flights, but according to Spotlight PA, as many as 2/3 of the flight costs for the year were, quote, accrued directly by the governor's office. So their reporting says, so 410,000, the number that Jared mentioned, was the total flight costs for the whole year. According to Spotlight PA's reporting, $270,000 of that in fuel, maintenance, personnel expenses was supposed to be from the governor's office. And compared to Tom Wolf's busiest year, which was 2018, those costs were $136,000 then. So the story was basically about how Shapiro's been, using the plane more. And some watchdogs have expressed some concerns over this, but Shapiro's administration is saying this is helping connect government officials and the people. So arguments for, against.
All right, Asha, this was a good news quiz. I like this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was fun. Good job, Jared.
Yeah,
Thank you. I had fun.
Super smart and impressive. Okay, that was Asha Prahar, the editor of the Hey Philly newsletter, Laura Benshoff, executive producer of CityCast Philly, and Jared Midovich, editor-in-chief at the Daily Pennsylvanian. Thanks for joining me for this episode of CityCast Philly.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This was great. Thanks, Janae.
That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this news roundup, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.